Hello everyone, welcome to my Resident Evil 0 hard difficulty, no damage walkthrough. And this is going to be the basement area and also the rest of the training facility. And I made a mistake in the last part. I forgot to get the green chemicals from the medicine room. Because for the laboratory, I'm going to be putting Rebecca down below and putting Billy up top. And because of the fact that there aren't any green chemicals on the bottom floor, and I can't just bring the characters back together in the laboratory area, I have to get the green chemicals here. Because there's only red chemicals on the bottom floor of the laboratory. And that is a mistake you want to avoid if you're trying to put Rebecca on the bottom floor. And the reason why I need Rebecca on the bottom floor of the laboratory is so that she can deal with a leech man. Because Rebecca throws Molotovs really fast compared to Billy. Billy is so vulnerable to attacks when he's throwing Molotovs. It's quite ironic because he's far more efficient with guns than Rebecca is. So I don't know why he has so much trouble throwing Molotovs. So at least I corrected my mistake, and now we're going to head into the basement area. And I'm going to drop the ink ribbon on the ground, because it's taking up a lot of space. It's one of the frustrating parts about playing the older Resident Evil games, because of the fact that you're having to rely on ink ribbons to save. Every time you restart the checkpoint, the ink ribbons are always in your inventory, so you have to constantly drop on the ground, or place them into an item box, and it just adds more time to the loading screens. It's something that should have been optimized better, and it's really time-consuming. I'm so glad that Resident Evil 7 introduced the ability to choose how many you want to drop into an item box or stuff like that. So you could get it so that you had only one ink ribbon in your inventory, and then you created the save, and you had no ink ribbons in your inventory. I mean, Resident Evil 2 Remake had that feature, thankfully. At least that's one good aspect from Resident Evil 7 that Resident Evil 2 Remake had. But back to this. I killed those two spiders because those spiders constantly damage me every time I try to run for Rebecca. Because we're going to be separated from Rebecca for a little bit, and she's going to get put into a trap, and we have to save her within a certain amount of time. And we're going to be introduced to a new enemy type once the power is back on. The Eliminators. The Eliminators are monkeys, and they're one of the most frustrating enemies in the game. But thankfully, you only ever encounter them once, unless you deviate off the intended path and you go into an area you revisited. Then they will actually be there. And this is the event that triggers the spawning of the Eliminators. And the code here is up, up, down, up, up. So there you go. And I just trimmed out all the cutscenes there, and you know, the door I was at when I swapped to Rebecca is this room that I'm in. I'm going to pick up all the pistol ammo here. I'm going to pick up the shotgun shells, which I did. And I don't even have to kill that zombie, thankfully. And be careful of the one that's on the ground. He's alive. You can tell because he's turning his head towards you, which is a nice tell that he's alive. And now all you gotta do is just make your way to the basement area. And you're gonna see me making a lot of mistakes here, because I forget to take the grenade launcher with me. Because I forgot to drop one thing out of my inventory, because heavy weapons take up 2 blocks of inventory. So I dropped the pistol rounds, but then I completely blanked out on the fact that I'm supposed to pick up the grenade launcher, so I go to the kitchen area, and then I realized, oh my god, I forgot the grenade launcher, now I have to go back. It's another one of the most frustrating things when it comes to playing an older Resident Evil game, because of the way the inventory system works. Okay, so we're gonna head back into the basement here. This guy will get up, so just get rid of him. And don't worry about the amount of shotgun shells you're using, you're gonna get a lot back. And you're gonna need the shotgun against the Eliminators here, because they're gonna be in this next room, and all you gotta do here is stand your ground. Simply aim the moment you gain control of Billy. And use the target locking system by pressing L1 while you're aiming, in order to pinpoint the locations of the Eliminators. And these guys are incredibly evasive. They love to jump around, they can bounce off walls, they can stun lock you. It's very frustrating. And look at that right there, that was very close just then. But because of the way the shooting works on this game, where the shooting is more of a conical pattern, even if you're not pointing your gun at an enemy, you'll still be able to hit them so long as they're within that cone of view. And the shotgun has a lot of range. Because as you'll notice here, I managed to shoot these Eliminators from across the room with the shotgun, which is not how shotguns are supposed to be, but thank God it's like that, because these Eliminators are absolutely annoying. And that is the last time we will be encountering Eliminators. And the next room coming up will have a bunch of spiders, but you can just run past them very easily. And since we already got introduced to a new enemy type, we're about to be introduced to another new enemy type, which is the Hunter. And compared to the other Resident Evil games, the Hunters on this game are incredibly douchey. They love to cheat a lot, and the design on them is really cheap, because they have this tendency of hyper-armoring through your shots, even though in the other Resident Evil games, they can't do that when they're in the air, for instance. Like in the other Resident Evil games, the shotgun can actually knock over Hunters, but on this game, it only seems to knock over Hunters on the first shot, and then all subsequent shot afterwards, it doesn't seem to affect them. I don't know why that's the case with certain enemies on this game. Like, the spiders, for instance, they flinch once, and then you have to wait a second, or rather a few seconds, after the first stun to re-engage the next stun, because if you try hitting them before the time limit is up, they will not get flinched, and they will hit you. And like that I can understand, because it's about being patient, but with the Hunters, it doesn't make any sense, because even if you're patient, they still don't recover their stun HP, and I don't understand why. And thankfully, for this section, the game provides you acid rounds inside of the battle sequence area. And I'm having to give some of my ammo to Rebecca. But before I initiate the fight with the Hunters, I'm going to go pick up an upgrade for the handgun, because I have plenty of grenade rounds to deal with the two plate crawlers here. So stand right about here and then aim down. You should be able to take them both out without them attacking you. And I do manage to kill them with 3 grenades, but I ended up wasting a 4th grenade, because it takes 2 grenades to kill these plate crawlers, but I didn't think a 3rd grenade would actually hit both of them, because I didn't think that was a thing in this game, but it actually is. So if I had just saved my last shot, I would have saved 1 more grenade round, but it's not that big of a deal. And I had made a mistake. I didn't combine the shotgun shells in Rebecca's inventory, so I completely blanked out on the fact that there are 2 spaces filled with shotgun shells that I could have just combined and freed up an empty space. Yeah, I made a lot of simple mistakes in this particular video. But here is the locker. This is where the customization kit is for the handgun. You can apply this to either Billy or Rebecca's handgun, but because we don't have Rebecca's handgun, I can only put it on Billy's handgun, and I recommend putting it on Billy's handgun. I mean, Seraphim17 did say that putting the customization parts on Rebecca's handgun is better, but I can't really say for sure. For the most part, I only ever put the parts on Billy's handgun, because Billy's handgun, I feel like, is a lot better than Rebecca's Samurai Edge. So now that that's done, I'm going to take on the Hunters inside of the battle sequence area. And the acid rounds are going to be behind me when I enter this area. And for the control panel here, press left, and then get the acid rounds, and then move Billy forward. And then you're going to have to press left again to gain access to that button. And I try to combine the acid rounds with my grenade launcher, because that is a thing you can do. You can combine items that are outside of your inventory with items that are inside of your inventory, without having to place the item inside of your inventory, which is a cool system. But on Resident Evil 0, for some reason, when you have full inventory, you can't get that command, and I don't know why, because that's not a thing in Resident Evil 2 Remake. So it's clear they fixed that particular issue with Resident Evil 0 in Resident Evil 2 Remake, which I'm glad. But here's the button. The Hunters are going to spawn. There are 2 Hunters, and you just gotta use 2 acid rounds on each of them. And compared to the Hunters from the older Resident Evil games, in Resident Evil 0, the Hunters love to spam jump attack a lot when you're at a distance. That's not like in Resident Evil 1, where the jump attack is only triggered if you run towards the Hunters. But unlike Resident Evil 1, you cannot stun the Hunters effectively, because the hit stun is broken on them. Like, you can even knock over Hunters out of the air with the knife in Resident Evil 1, which was one of the coolest things ever, and it's like that in the other Resident Evil games as well, except for this one. And you need such a system like that to balance out the spammy nature of their attacks. Because an enemy that loves to spam attacks a lot is not a well-designed enemy at all. It's just an enemy that loves to cheat, because they have all these advantages that you have. It's just not a properly balanced fight. So the fact that Resident Evil 0 has some very inconsistent hit stun systems with the Hunters is just really frustrating. But thankfully, the rest of the Hunters will not be an issue. We're going to be encountering Hunters again when we get to the sequence after the, oh no, we're going to be encountering them in the laboratory section in the breathing room. That's the hardest hunter encounter in the game, because I still haven't found a good strategy for it. But my strategy does involve Molotovs, but I'll definitely get to it when I get to the breathing room area of the laboratory. Instead, we're about to do a puzzle right now. This is a puzzle that requires Billy's lighter. The order for this puzzle is the stag, then it is the dog, then it is the horse, then it is the cougar, then it's the snake, and then it is the eagle. And you basically figure out the order by examining the statues, because each of the statues will say something in relation to the previous statue in the sequence. And that's how you figure out the order. It's very strange logic with the way they talk about the animals for these statues. Because I mean, obviously it's understandable that a snake can take down something big as a cougar and then an eagle, but when you just try to use that to justify the hierarchy of the animals, it does sound very strange. So now that door is open, we can gain access to the tablet that we need to access the observatory. And there's also a bottle that we need for Molotovs. But once again, I have made another blunder in the inventory management game. I did not drop the incendiary rounds, and I did not drop any other ammunition that I didn't need for the sequence. So I'm having to go back to the main hall again and drop those rounds and drop other things. But the good news is that I'm going to take Rebecca to the water room area so that I can do that sequence, because the final enemies that we have to deal with are just the Leechman and a bunch of zombies for this particular sequence. Oh, and also a bunch of plague crawlers as well, but the plague crawlers are very easy to deal with because there's a spot you can stand inside of the big hall where you fought the Centurion boss, where they can't actually reach you, and you can just keep shooting them with your pistol. So I'm going to drop the Magnum rounds, the incendiary rounds, and I'm going to pick up the Molotovs, and then I'm going to drop the... Oh no, I'm not going to drop the shotgun shells, I believe. Because there are some shotgun shells in the room where you use the water key. And you need to have Molotovs for this. You need to have at least 4 Molotovs if you want to kill the Leechman. And make sure you're playing as Rebecca, because as I've already mentioned, Rebecca throws Molotovs faster than Billy. This is the one sequence of the game where you need to kill the Leechman, because the Leechman for this particular sequence is inside of a very tight corridor, and running past him is almost RNG dependent when it comes to no damage. And I did not want to take that chance whatsoever. And Server 17 did the same thing, but he used Billy, which was a big mistake. But I'm not going to make that same mistake, so I'm just going to use Rebecca. And the Leechman's right over here. So the Leechmen are always in the passive state, and then when he shakes like that, he's going to go into his berserk state. But I'm going to kill him before he has a chance to attack me, because when he's in his berserk state, he's at his most dangerous. The great thing about the berserk state Leechman is that his grab is pretty fair. Oh, watch this, by the way. This is really stupid right here. I'm trying to pick up the vice handle, but the stupid text box for examining the equipment is in the way. And then I finally pick it up after 5 times of just examining that stupid equipment. And I get past the Leechman, thankfully. I could have easily been hit by the Leechman because of those stupid text boxes. I have no idea how that is acceptable for putting text boxes near items. And like I said, it happens in the older Resident Evil games, but nowhere near to the same degree as Resident Evil 0. They made some questionable design choices in Resident Evil 0. But now that we've used the vice handle, we can gain access to the tablet here. And there are some shotgun shells in this room, so I'm going to try to get past the zombies. So, I'm just going to bait out this guy's grab, because the zombies like to do their grabs from a longer range compared to Resident Evil 1. But I suppose a safer method for getting past zombies is to use the knife, because when you aim downward and you slash, you shift your hitbox forward, and you'll be able to bait out zombie attacks easily. But be careful not to time it too late, because you might accidentally shift your hitbox into a zombie's grab and you'll get bit. So bear that in mind when you're trying to do the knife strategy to get past zombies. And that is the end of any sort of difficult encounter in the training facility. I mean, the only other enemies left are just those plague crawlers in the Centurion room, but with the exploit I discovered a long time ago, where I just stand in a particular spot and I just shoot them, they are not a problem whatsoever. You just gotta have the ammo to do it, and thankfully the upgraded pistol does a lot more damage than the normal pistol, and it also fires faster, which is really cool. So yeah, this is all we're doing right now. We're just getting the tablets, and we're just trying to move all of our equipment over to the observatory area so that we can prepare for the laboratory section and for the stupid giant bat boss fight. And all we're doing is just role-playing as a delivery man / delivery woman. That's literally all we're doing, which is why I've sped up the video to 2x speed, just so the video goes by a little bit faster. But of course, I didn't want to make it too fast, because then people will question, oh, what have you been doing? Did I miss anything that I was supposed to do, or stuff like that? Could have made this 4x speed, but for that reason, I made it 2x speed. So for this final tablet, we're going to head back into the water key area, because there's one room we have not accessed, since we didn't have both the characters at the time. So right here, you need to get Billy to play the piano, because he's better at playing the piano than Rebecca. And then you need to get Rebecca inside that room. There's some magnum ammo there, and then there's also a battery that we need. And there's also a bottle there if you want to craft more Molotovs, but I didn't have gasoline available at the time. And then the door will close once you pick up the battery. Then you just need to get Billy to play the piano again, and then the door will open. It sounds strange, doesn't it? But just don't question it. Just do it. And right here, I'm just going to finish off the plague crawlers in this room. And here's the exploit. The plague crawlers cannot actually get to you because there's an invisible barrier blocking their progress. So, using that invisible barrier to my advantage, I'm going to kill these guys using the upgraded pistol, because the upgraded pistol has a faster rate of fire, and it does more damage. And now that the way is clear, I'm going to drop the shotgun and the grenade launcher in this room. And that's all we're really doing. We're just coming in here, dropping stuff, heading back out there, grabbing more of the stuff, placing it inside the observatory, and we're just repeating that. But with the battery, we can go outside here and place the battery inside of this slot here. And then that will allow us to drop a crate. And then we're going to use the crate to gain access to a tablet that's just on top of a column. And that will be the final tablet that we need to gain access to the laboratory area. But do not place the tablets inside of the observatory immediately, because if you don't collect all of your items, or you leave your partner outside when you put those tablets in, it will cause the observatory to rise, and your partner will then have to access the observatory from another level, which is filled with a bunch of eliminators. And you will take a lot of damage, so make sure you get everything prepared, get your partner inside, and then put in all the tablets. And here's the final tablet. Now that we have all the tablets, all we gotta do is just, once again, play the role of delivery man and just deliver everything inside of this room into the observatory. And then we can finally place all the tablets inside and upraise the observatory, and we have gained access to the church area that leads to the laboratory. And that will conclude the video. And believe it or not, guys, this is actually halfway into the game. I can definitely agree with Seraphim17 on that point. The training facility and the train level together, as a whole, they make up a large amount of the game. You know, there's a lot of thought put into the training facility, more so than in the later areas. Because the laboratory section can be done in minutes. And then this whole section where you're just playing as Rebecca, it can be done so fast. And then the treatment plant is a little bit longer, but it's nowhere near as long as the training facility. So this is literally the halfway point. And that's just crazy thinking about it. But right here, I'm placing 2 out of the 3 Unity tablets inside. And then I'm just going to head back and pick up all the other things. Because as I've already mentioned, if you place all 3 of the Unity tablets in immediately, it will cause the observatory to rise, and that's not something you want if Rebecca's outside of the room. And Rebecca was outside of the room, so if I had accidentally placed that tablet inside, it would have raised the observatory, and then Rebecca would have had to gained access to the observatory by going through a bunch of eliminators. And she would have easily taken damage, because the eliminators are ridiculously annoying, because they have so much range on their attacks. Some of their hitboxes can be pretty bad, and they love to attack you in groups. And you're on a very narrow corridor when you're trying to get back into the observatory through that path. And dodging the eliminators can be next to impossible in a narrow corridor. But we have everything. Now we just need to place the final tablet. And we have gained access to the church area that precedes the laboratory area, because the laboratory is directly underneath the church.
Come on.
Roger.
But we can't gain access to the laboratory yet because we need to gain access to the power. And we can only gain access to the power once we've killed the giant bat, but that's for the next video. So while I'm just arranging my inventory, I'll talk about a couple of things related to Resident Evil 0. Something I forgot to mention for the second spider corridor, when you're down in the other part of the basement. When you saw me running through that corridor, Rebecca was nowhere to be seen. That's because I was controlling her with the right analog stick. And an important no damage strategy to note if you're planning on getting through a room with your AI partner around, have the AI run into a wall using the right analog stick, and then you yourself can go through that room with using the left analog stick. And because of the fact that you're still holding in a direction on the right analog stick, it's not going to be affected by the camera changes, and that's something I forgot to mention as well. Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 0 on the remakes, they have the ability to give you an alternative style of movement that's more fluid and not as restrictive like the tank control system, where you can use the analog sticks to move your characters. But one of the biggest problems with the alternative style of movement, because it wasn't really implemented well into either game, is that when you swap between the individual camera angles, there are times when your characters don't register the proper movement style. So for instance, if you are holding forward on the analog stick for one particular camera angle, and then you swap to another camera angle, you might see a moment where, for instance, your character will go to the left, or they'll go behind them, or do something that is not related to how you're pushing the analog stick at the moment. And that's because it wasn't optimized well for each of the individual camera angles. It's just something that should have been done better, but it's not done better at all. So a good tip to note if you're trying to use the alternative style of movement, when you're holding your analog stick in a particular direction, and you swap between the individual camera angles, if you're still holding in that direction, your character will still move in relation to the previous camera angle. But if you release the analog stick back into its neutral state, and you go to the next camera angle, you'll be able to properly calibrate the proper movement style for that particular camera angle. And that's something important to note if you're planning on using the same method as I am when it comes to keeping your AI partner safe. Always make sure you're pushing in the same direction that you're controlling your AI partner, so that they continue to walk into the wall, even though you shifted between the camera angles. But this movement issue is only apparent with the alternative style of movement, because that's not what the game was designed for. When you're using the tank control system, using the D-pad, you're never going to have any of those movement issues, and you got to learn how to use both those movement systems if you want to succeed in Resident Evil 0. But that is the end of this video. I'm going to deal with the Bat Boss and the laboratory section in the next video, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.